they're laughing while they lock the chains. Captain Varen muttered it under his breath, eyes locked on the laser plasma display flickering above the command pit. The room's glow cast jagged shadows across the reinforced concrete walls, illuminating the anxious faces of junior officers stationed across the subterranean command center. One screen showed Earth blue, fractured, dwarfed now by the arrival of something far larger than human arrogance could contain. Above the Pacific Rim, the Zorath dreadnought broke the sky open. It didn't arrive in silence. The skies above Sydney were split by a sickening groan, atmospheric compression giving way to the heaviest object ever dragged into orbit. Civilians staggered in the streets, shielding their ears as dogs howled and skyscraper glass shivered in its frames. Traffic stopped. Children wept in schoolyards. And in the Andes, under 60 meters of bedrock, a voice cut across the trembling silence. Confirm fleet count. Commander Sarin Vax didn't shout. He never did. He didn't have to. A junior technician, barely 20, sweat running into his collar, tapped through overlapping data streams. 150 vessels confirmed, triangular signature matrix, coalition standard, gravitic shielding evident. Broadcasts, Vax asked, eyes never leaving the primary hub. Multiple languages, Commander. English, Mandarin, Tamil, Arabic. Mocking tone. I can play you the bass line. Baxton nod. He simply closed his eyes. Do it. The voice that came through was not theatrical. It was cruel. A voice born from a species that didn't understand hesitation because it had never needed to. Earthlings. Surrender what you have left of dignity. Your relic ships, fueled by combustion, fired by impact, are museum pieces. You will not fight. You will serve. A low, bitter chuckle followed in the background of the message, alien in rhythm, reptilian in timbre. Then every display in the chamber blinked out. Not glitched, obliterated. Earth's orbital sensor grid went dead like candles pulled into the tide. The blackout hit global systems like a viral nerve strike. Across continents, command terminals rebooted into static. Satellites vanished from tracking indexes. The sky was still full of stars, but Earth had gone blind. Flagship's doing it, Vax murmured, more to himself than anyone. They're masking the upper orbit and frying the uplinks. Should we initiate low Earth fallback systems? No. That's exactly what they want us to do. Wait. Across the bunker, the air turned heavier. Not hotter, not colder, just heavier, the way it does before something massive falls. On the overhead, a display reactivated. No colors. Just a single planetary feed, rerouted from a civilian weather satellite. Antarctica. Zoom in. Now closer. They're Zorath harvesters. Silver skeletal structures taller than skyscrapers, pierced the surface like surgical instruments, carving into the frozen crust with heat jets and resonance drills. The ice hissed, cracked, collapsed. The continent bled mineral clouds into the wind. Commander, someone whispered. Vax stared. His eyes didn't betray emotion, but behind them, something ancient turned awake. He walked to the central panel, keying in a code manually. The screen asked for confirmation. Vax entered his former designation, not his current one. SVAX/Earth Propulsion R&D Command // Class C Authority Override. A second later, a sealed file opened. A railgun design. One line read, Spearpoint, final use only. Status of the Dauntless, Vax asked, still reading. Varen stiffened. Moored under equatorial bay grid, all systems green, but fleets grounded under defensive protocol. Good. Let 'em keep thinking we're grounded. You are not authorizing launch? No. I'm authorizing silence. Vax turned. From now on, nothing leaves this room. Not a whisper, not a breath. We operate outside global net. All civilian feeds rerouted through false uplinks. As of now, this facility is its own orbit. His gaze turned to the far wall, reinforced, featureless, yet heavy with what it held behind. 12 silver capsules slept behind that wall. Vax approached it, rested his palm against the cold slab. "Get me Captain Jelt. Immediately." "Sir, Jelt was removed from active service 2 years ago. Dishonorably. Held, not anymore." Up above, in the silence of orbit, one of Earth's 32 fusion-fueled gunships trembled as the dreadnought passed beneath it. From its viewing port, a lone technician watched as the alien flagship's belly lit with magnetic pulses, casting a deep crimson sheen across the clouds. Then came the laughter again. This time, Earth heard it in every city. The Zorath opened full-spectrum audio relay and pumped it into every civilian broadcast channel, news station, emergency frequency. Laughter, spliced with footage of Earth's ships, lined in dry docks like museum artifacts. One image showed a fusion missile igniting in 40% slow motion, captioned, "When Rocks Try to Speak." Somewhere in Nairobi, a boy threw a radio through his apartment window. In Dili, teachers ushered children out of classrooms. In Sao Paulo, a politician punched a wall until the blood stained his tie. Back in the outback, a different rhythm grew. Not rage, not fear, or calculation. Bex didn't pace. He simply moved to a new screen and began entering trajectory curves. One of the younger officers stared in confusion. "Sir, that targeting interface, it's from the asteroid net. We haven't used those in decades." "They've forgotten what kinetic means," Vax replied. "Let's remind them, quietly." Another warning buzzed through. Multiple vessels entering the stratosphere over Antarctica. More harvesters. Bigger ones. The Zorath weren't waiting for diplomacy, they were already mining. "They think the fight's over," someone said aloud. Vax's hand stopped on the screen. His voice, when it came, wasn't loud, but it cut clean. "Let them think we're relics. Let them laugh at our fire. What we're building isn't a fleet. It's a moment. And when it arrives, there won't be anything left to laugh at." Behind him the wall hissed open. A sealed chamber. A rail system. 12 drone pods waited, lined like coffins, Matt Dack, silent. Captain Myron Jelt's name blinked on screen. Earth, for the first time in hours, stopped watching the skies in fear. Now it watched, in waiting. The drone bay hissed shut behind Vax. Inside the launch cradle, 12 Matt jet pods sat dormant, lined in rows like the ribs of some submerged predator. No lights, no identifiers, just raw, angular geometry designed for stealth, not survival. He stood at the console in silence, fingers moving across hard physical keys, bypassing voice-activated controls. His breath was steady, his face unreadable. Each entered command cut deeper through the operating layers of Earth's forbidden playbook. "Authorization complete," said Lieutenant Dren, eyes narrowed at the control interface. "But we're still locked on targeting. No telemetry, no harmonic resolution. They'll just bounce off." "Pellets." "Not bounce," Vex muttered. "Evaporate." He pressed his thumb against the biometric seal. "Bring up Project Spearpoint's final engineering logs. Full render." The screen blinked alive, not the usual schematic. This was raw, original footage from the underground installation 2 decades back. The Dauntless, before it was ever launched, submerged in scaffolding. Teams in reinforced suits guided the rail housing into the superstructure's spinal chamber, 6 layers of armor plating, all hollowed to accommodate a magnetic coil the size of a freight train. A voice from the old file played. "Tungsten alloy, 14 meters, density optimized for gravitational impact. Estimated terminal velocity, 0.1 c, single-use platform. Irrecoverable structure post-deployment, margin of error unacceptable for active fielding." The Council's rejection stamp burned red across the frame. "Unacceptable," Vax repeated, barely moving his mouth. "Because they couldn't imagine needing it." He turned away from the terminal. His coat whispered as it shifted. Stiff from heat-shielding fibers, worn from years of disuse. "Get me Jelt," he said. Drin's hands froze. "Sir, that man?" Route it through an encrypted terrestrial line. He doesn't trust orbital comms. He'll be listening. The officer hesitated, then nodded. A separate panel folded open, revealing an analog relay switchboard long since removed from standard protocol. Drin plugged it in. The signal took 10 seconds to stabilize. The screen didn't show a face, only the dim interior of a forgotten cabin. Somewhere inland, by the grain of the wood, perhaps an old floodplain. Dust floated through shafts of amber light from a slatted window. A figure leaned forward, out of the shadows. Captain Myron Jelt hadn't aged well. Scar across the right cheek, gray stubble etched with burn lines, one eye slightly discolored from an unhealed trauma. Still breathing? Axe said. You shouldn't have found me. I didn't. I knew where you'd be. Jelt sat down, picked up a small device, something hand-carved, and set it on the table. You wouldn't call unless it was worse than the last time. This isn't worse. It's final. Jelt's fingers curled. So that thing you buried under Dauntless, you're firing it? Bex didn't answer. Instead, he slid a data shard into the reader. I need harmonic penetration data from the Dreadnought. Not speculative ranges. I need resonance snapshots, timing down to 5 decimal places. You know what that means. You want the window. I want the gap. Jelt exhaled through his nose, the breath shaking once. You know what happens if I miss that window. I also know what happens if we don't try. Silence sat between them. Jelt finally nodded. 12? 12. I'll need real-time feedback loops. Manual, none of your remote AI. You'll get analog relays and a dead air corridor every 6 minutes. You'll fly blind between them. Jelt chuckled bitterly. Just how I like it. The connection cut. Vax stared at the screen for a second longer. Behind him, the room shifted. Officers stepped back as the drone capsules lifted one by one into vertical launch arms, their composite shells catching the halogen beams like obsidian spears. Each one had no more than 6 square meters of space inside. Enough for control nodes, not comfort. Each one carried thermal camouflage plating, adaptive curvature systems, and nothing resembling a weapon. They weren't designed to strike. They were designed to disappear. Launch tube prepared, called Drin. You'll need to manually authorize ignition. Vax placed both hands on the panel. 2 levers. He pulled them simultaneously. 12 hydraulic detonations cracked through the air like bones breaking in sequence. One by one, the drones shot into orbit, each staggering a few seconds apart to reduce trackable patterning. No external comms. No beacon trails. They exited Earth's atmosphere without a single radar in the coalition even twitching. Up above, the Zorath continued their operation unopposed. Their harvesters groaned deeper into the Antarctic surface, displacing entire ice shelves, exposing ancient tectonic faults to the open air. Massive mineral-eating bots the size of drilling platforms chewed into buried crystal veins, their stabilizers embedding deeper with every cycle. From their orbiting ships, Zorath officers transmitted gloating commentaries to their home systems. Footage of Earth's grounded vessels, spliced with projections of resource extraction forecasts. A propaganda reel, wrapped in conquest metrics. Inside one of Earth's few remaining air command towers, a junior flight technician broke down in tears. Not out of fear, not out of anger, out of the crushing weight of helplessness. Back in the Australian base, Vax watched the drone signatures vanish one by one into orbital slings, their blackout mode effective. You ever meet him? Dren asked suddenly, still working at his station. Jalga. Once. After his court-martial. What did he say to you? Vax didn't look away from the trajectory plot forming on the interface. The 12 lines blinked red, then gray, then finally transparent. His head, if Earth ever truly needed him, it wouldn't ask twice. The officer nodded, swallowing hard. Outside, sand shifted as electromagnetic discharge from the underground bay pulsed into the sky, kicking dust into the wind. Kangaroo tracks vanished under it, and heat rippled across the horizon. In low orbit, a single Zorath patrol cruiser drifted past a frozen telemetry point. Nothing showed on its scopes, Nothing registered on its thermal scans. Yet one of its engineers turned sharply toward a panel. Something twitched. An anomaly, gone as quickly as it came, unregistered, dismissed. Behind its stabilizer fin, invisible against the distortion field of the dreadnought's gravitational signature, a single drone floated silently, its data needle extended. No one saw it. He saw everything. Jelt's fingers hovered over the manual stabilization ring, tracking the pulse signature from the dreadnought's lower emitter bank. His cockpit was sealed in black polymer, smell of old circuit adhesive clinging to the recycled air. A single blue diode blinked overhead, heartbeat steady. His drone, one of 12, drifted within 15 kilometers of the Zorath flagship, tucked into the gravimetric distortion layer created by its artificial mass field. Signal compression, steady, he whispered into the analog throat mic. Visual triangulation grid locked. Beginning harmonic ghosting sweep now. One by one, the drones adjusted their skin. Not cloaks, not invisibility, just geometry so unforgiving it confused reflection patterns. Any Zorath scan would bounce back noise, like static dancing on a cracked screen. The flagship's shields bloomed once every few seconds, then collapsed inward, visible only to those watching the light distort in repeating arcs. Jelt tracked that bloom, studied the rhythm. Every 14.08 milliseconds, it reset. But every 70th thirst pulse, the bloom didn't fully close. That hiccup, imperceptible to any average reading, lasted only 0.002 milliseconds longer. That's when the gravitic field dipped, a small stutter in the waveform, like a skipped beat in a heart surrounded by armor. Jelt didn't smile. He just said, "There you are." Far below, Commander Vac sat in silence at his command console while two of Earth's internal satellites played the same loop on screens across every capital on the planet. The message was diplomatic in tone, delivered in calm voiceovers, translated for every major region. Earth is entering dialogue with the Zorath Coalition. Our priority is preservation of life. A formal recognition of their superiority ensures our long-term survival. Do not resist. This is not surrender. It is strategy. The words felt like acid in every soldier's throat. But they were necessary. Inside the Canadian Parliament, someone threw a chair through a stained glass panel. In Berlin, protesters pelted government buildings with rocks and old comms equipment. Panic flickered on digital billboards. Markets crashed, public morale unraveled, and conspiracy groups declared the Earth's defense grid a myth. And in Australia, Vax sat behind an encrypted feed line and watched the chaos as if it were happening in another lifetime. Dren paced nearby. "They think you've betrayed them." Vax didn't look away. "They're not wrong. You think they'll forgive this when it's done? I'm not asking them to." Dren's hands curled at his sides. "Sir, they're protesting outside every major base. Our own pilots are refusing check-ins. Let them. What if someone breaks ranks? Goes off-screen?" Vax's voice turned flat. "Then they've cost us our last shot." Inside the orbital drone, Jelt adjusted the calibration ring again. Numbers flickered on the manual readout, thermal sensors sweeping in 120-degree arcs. Data was being streamed frame by frame to Earth's buried server. Nothing clean, no automation. Jelt ran every equation in his head before inputting the response loop. His co-pilot, a voice only from Drone 7, crackled in on the hard line. "You still reading that gap?" "Confirmed. Cycle dip at 14.082. Consistent. It's a designed flaw, might be power recycling. Or arrogance. They didn't think anyone would get close enough to see it." Silence followed. "Your call, Jelt." Jelt tapped a manual override key, then inserted a command stick into the core port. He leaned back, swallowed once, and braced his head against the seat lining. "I'm marking the window. Earth's only going to get one." Below the orbital shell, Antarctic ice boiled as another wave of Zorath harvesters pressed deeper into mineral layers. Heat towers released plumes of vapor into the stratosphere, turning the sky a sulfuric yellow over the southern pole. From orbit, Earth's shape had started to warp from the view, no longer blue, but bruised. Inside the global command channel, diplomats begged for clarity. Video calls stacked up in long encrypted files. Leaders asking for confirmation, for answers, for plans. None arrived. The official Earth surrender broadcast played on repeat, feeding the illusion that Earth had capitulated. In the Zorath command spire aboard the flagship, a senior tactician known as Krelos activated a mock broadcast titled Primitive Collapse. It featured slowed-down clips of Earth's outdated ships entering dry dock, played against ambient tones that mimicked tribal chants. Meant to humiliate, to assert dominance without firing a shot. Earth responds with theater, close remark to his second-in-command, not even worthy of annihilation. Diabli don't understand conquest, his officer replied. They don't need to, Krylos said. They only need to understand ownership. Back in Drone 3, Jelt stared at the waveform printout. The shield oscillation had stuttered again. For the fifth time, same duration. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a system loop. It had a beat.
And beats could be broken.
He leaned in, breath fogging the cold glass in front of the interface.
Recording final telemetry, now, he said into the line. Routing full cycle signature to command. He hesitated, then keyed in 4 words. Manual override only. The data routed through the hard channel, bypassing every digital relay. Inside the mountain base, Vax leaned forward as the message arrived. Window confirmed fire ready. He closed his eyes, exhaled through his nose, then stood without a word. He walked to the wall panel behind the tactical board, pressed his hand into the emergency seal, and twisted the embedded ring once to unlock it. The door swung inward. Beyond it, the Dauntless's launch chamber waited. Still grounded, still silent. Not for much longer.
A shrill tone snapped through the war table's analog core. The confirmation code pulsed once. Jelt's signal had arrived. Shield cycle mapped, targeting window real. Commander Vax didn't speak. He turned toward the backup launch board and typed in a buried sequence from memory. 1 digit wrong and it would trigger a security lockout. He didn't miss. A silo schematic appeared on the monitor. Lunar Subsurface Cluster 14E. Beneath the gray crust of the moon, 20 compartments stirred in sequence. Silent for decades. Sealed during the last Cold Treaty. Earth's governments believed they stored data vaults. They were wrong. Lunar Howl Protocol enabled, Dren reported, scanning the countdown display. All decoys pre-fitted with plasma diffusion flares and reflector skin. Can they carry nothing inside? Vax asked without looking. Only confusion. He leaned in and initiated the sequence. Far above the dark side of the moon, ancient hatches cracked open, dust from another century spilling into orbit. From within, Earth's ghosts rose. 20 vessels shaped like war carriers. Bulked to reflect enemy scans, ridged with false compartments. Each moved with the grace of something real. They weren't ships, they were masks made to bleed belief. The Zorath sensors caught them within minutes. Inside the enemy fleet's primary targeting chamber, officers scrambled to reroute targeting data. Dozens of new threats had just entered their detection range, each broadcasting chaotic frequencies suggesting erratic drive signatures and unshielded energy coils. To the Zorath, it looked like Earth had just launched its entire hidden arsenal. Inside the dreadnought, Kleos reviewed the incoming footage and laughed openly. Earth's funeral fleet, he called it. Rusted coffins they've thrown into orbit to die. 50 ships broke formation without waiting for confirmation. Orders were given before consensus. The hunters had smelled weakness. Back on Earth, Vax monitored the dispersion pattern. Each decoy moved on a separate arc, simulating evasive maneuvers. Solar reflection patterns were embedded in their hull coatings, mimicking fusion drive discharge. He observed without flinching. Dren spoke up. They're diverting. Flagship's support net has holes forming at all outer layers. Good, Vax muttered. It only takes one. He entered a second sequence, this one deeper. Spearpoint protocol, primary vector pathing, engage. Below the Andes, seismic dampeners kicked in as the Dauntless began to stir for the first time in 9 months. The bay's inner lock cycled shut, lights dimming from the power draw. Metal braces retracted from the warship's launch gantry. Each thud echoed down the reinforced corridor like a hammer slamming into wet stone. The Dauntless rose. Its hull wasn't built for style. It was heavy, uneven, reinforced along a dorsal spine that cradled Earth's forbidden answer. The Spearpoint system, a railgun the length of a stadium, nested inside that ribcage like a giant's arrow waiting for its bow. The moment the warship cleared the launch shaft, the surrounding rock quaked. Dust fell from control room ceiling tiles. Monitors flickered, not from overload, but from the sheer magnetic influence now active within the Dauntless's core. Vax remained silent. Dren turned. "You're not going to notify the Joint Command? I told them we were surrendering. They'll see it the moment we breach orbital horizon. They'll think it's panic." He looked up then, his face calm, not tired, not determined. "Just sure. People don't need to know until it's already done." Orbital coordination lights across Earth's high-altitude relays adjusted. Civilian satellites were rerouted. Commercial telescopes were overridden with false footage loops. From every major city, the night sky showed only stars. But above the clouds, the Dauntless clawed through atmospheric drag like a mountain dragging itself uphill. No fanfare, no broadcast. It didn't even flare with heat. Its ascent vector had been planned with cold orbit physics, using glide intervals and shadow orbits to ride Earth's magnetic tail. Every move was silent, not because it needed to be hidden, but because noise was for amateurs. Inside the command bridge of the Dauntless, only 2 men spoke, pilot Davrik and tactical navigator Han. Han ran a cold wipe across his lips before speaking. "Target arc." Davrik pointed to a static chart drawn onto physical glass. "We wait for the moon to complete its pull. 37 seconds from now, Earth's own gravity bends us just enough to create a stable sling. You miss it, then we turn around and go home?" They both knew that wasn't true. Inside the coil housing, Earth's final weapon was being armed. Not by mechanical arms or auto-servos, but manually, by men in suits whose names were never registered on official lists. They moved slowly, checking each dial twice, speaking only in head nods and hand signs. The projectile, a single tungsten rod, was loaded into the cradle, its surface etched with directional markings only visible under infrared. It weighed less than a bus but carried more momentum than any weapon ever fired from Earth. The targeting sequence activated. Back in the underground control room, Vox watched the numbers align. The gravity timing was right. The moon's drag was pulling. The shield's oscillation window, already charted, would open again in just under 5 minutes. And the enemy didn't even know Earth's fleet was in motion. Dren stepped forward. "How do we know the Zorath won't detect our firing path?" "We don't," Vox replied. "But they've just spent the last hour watching a fake fleet scatter like scared prey. They'll think we've thrown everything we had." He pointed at the vector arc glowing on the master panel. "This isn't a fleet, this is a statement." On board the Dauntless, the internal coil array engaged, each segment locking into place, with mechanical claps that shook the frame. Men braced against railings. Breath slowed, no orders, just motion. Spearpoint entered the barrel. It didn't gleam. It didn't flash. It simply sat there, waiting for the sky to line up, waiting for Earth to send a message louder than any transmission, waiting to erase mockery with motion. The Dauntless had cleared its firing arc. Gravitational drift stabilized. Magnetic rails aligned. The final targeting handshake blinked green. A tungsten slug sat quiet in the chamber. 13 meters long, shaped like a spear with no tip, smooth and unmarked, cooled to sub-zero temperature to reduce thermal trace on launch. Its weight was not what made it deadly. Its velocity would be. On the bridge, Navigator Han checked the time code again. Shield modulation window opens in 31 seconds. Pilot Davrik steadied both hands on the ignition bars. His knuckles had gone pale. "We miss this? We die. Don't say it again. Han didn't turn. I won't need to. Inside Earth's command center, the silence had deepened. Vax stood behind a wall of observers, none of whom had spoken since the countdown began. On the central readout, no colors flashed, only numbers. 14 digits flicking down toward a singular intersection. The moment when the dreadnought's gravitic shield would lapse. Only for 0.004 of a second. Coil charge at maximum, Dren called out. Rayo housing locked. Magnetic balance optimal. Vax didn't blink. Fire when time hits 0.0004. Averick's breath slowed. His fingers didn't tremble. His eyes didn't shift. The rails began to throb, not with heat or light, but magnetism powerful enough to distort peripheral air pressure inside the firing chamber. Han flinched when his eardrum buzzed. Slug stable, Dobrek confirmed. Firing in 5, Han said. 4, 3, 2. Amon. Davrick pulled the bars apart. The chamber discharged. There was no flash, no thunder. The Dauntless didn't recoil. It flinched. The projectile vanished into black. From 100,000 kilometers, the rod began its silent run. The slug reached 0.1 C in less than 4 seconds. Atmospheric particles it encountered on the way ionized into thin mist trails. The temperature at its surface rose, but didn't break containment due to the ablation shell. Cameras could barely track it. Back in the drone's orbit, Shauna said, Jelt watched the harmonic graph tick over. The cycle dipped. The shield folded inward. The gap opened, and the rod arrived. It didn't glance off the shell. It didn't fragment. It entered clean, cutting through the gravitic field like a threaded needle pushed through fabric. The delay in detection lasted just long enough for the dreadnought to begin compensating, but not long enough to do anything about it. The tungsten tore through the outer hull without friction. The first breach ignited nothing. The second breach passed through the mid-soar plasma tanks. Superheated coolant vented in opposite directions, creating internal turbulence that staggered the craft's orientation. The third breach reached the fusion reactor. There was no explosion. The reactor's magnetic containment destabilized from sudden depressurization. Instead of detonating, it folded, collapsing in on itself. The structure tried to contain the energy and failed. A chain reaction erupted inward. From a distance, it looked like the dreadnought cracked its own spine. A single white filament of light split down its belly, followed by a sliver of expanding debris caught in anti-gravity struggle. Then came the second stage shockwave, not sound, but force, directionless and punishing. 60 vassals caught in range jerked sideways, structural ribs buckling as artificial inertia dampeners failed. Crews, inside, were flung against control panels. Power grids sparked. Hulls twisted midstream. Zorath command vessels lost formation immediately. Inside one of the support ships, Commander Dalvak grabbed onto a railing and shouted, "What hit us?" No one answered. All internal comms had gone dark. All fleet telemetry vanished. The dreadnought no longer responded. In the observation decks of cities across Earth, live sky feeds suddenly flared as the event appeared. White flash, then flickering trails of impact debris. People gasped. No one could explain it. No one had expected it. Back in the Dauntless, Han's eyes widened at the readout. Impact confirmed, target disassembled. Davrick wiped sweat off his temple. We did that? Han didn't answer. The Spearpoint system disengaged itself automatically. Coil segments depressurized. Internal servos began scrubbing data. On Earth. Vax finally exhaled and sat down slowly in his chair. He didn't speak. He didn't move for several seconds. Dren spoke first. The entire command net just vanished. Every signal went black. Good, Vax said softly. That's what silence means when it's earned. Up in orbit, the split halves of the dreadnought drifted apart. Their lightless hulls spun slowly through cold gravity. From within the exposed cross-section, shards of the internal reactor vented unstable plasma out into the vacuum, like leaking arteries. The monitoring drone captured the image before it lost tracking. Two halves of what was once considered indestructible, drifting away from each other, a trail of light between them like a wound that wouldn't close. No enemy broadcast followed. No response from the Zorath. They had gone quiet. The ocean cracked open like a wound. Off the Pacific shelf, beneath the Mariana Arc, 12 hatches rotated in sequence, each shielded under layers of coral crust and silt. Earth's true fleet, the ones never filed in public logs or paraded through ceremonial docks, pushed upward with sharp angular hulls that displaced seawater with unnatural stillness. Not a ripple reached the surface until the first vessel cleared the thermocline. Then came the second, then the rest. Inside Command Sub-Theta, Lieutenant Carr gritted his teeth as ballast purged through the lower channels. Ignition vector achieved, fleet emerging at full throttle. Commander Brax, head of Earth's Oceanic Defense Command, stood centered in the control ring, eyes fixed on the radar reflection blooming outward from the bay mouth. How many still docked? 14 subs remain. We're sending them orders to surface in staggered bursts, echelon wave formation. Good. Once we breach air, we take no orders from above. This isn't a coordinated defense, it's an execution. From high orbit, the first returning Zorath scouts began relaying images of the Pacific eruption. Earth's ships weren't sleek. They were blocky, asymmetrical, designed for function over form. But their armaments told a different story. Twin rail barrels extended from the dorsal platforms like twin spears, already aligned toward the orbital field above. Brax barked into the primary channel. Target vectors. Pick off the stragglers while they're adjusting formation. If you see a straight line, curve into it, don't chase. Overhead, the Dauntless remained motionless in lower orbit. It had fired its shot. Now it served only as silent deterrent. But Jelt's drones hadn't finished. From their masked positions, still drifting beneath electromagnetic cover, they released their payloads. Short-range localized electromagnetic disruptors, built from raw Earthside circuit cores. The effect wasn't cinematic. It was surgical. The first Zorath ship to lose guidance began listing off course immediately. Without its orientation gyros or heat vectoring, it rotated along a lateral axis, exposing its rear flanks. 2 railgun rounds tore through its midsection before it had time to reposition. Another Zorath vassal, mid-pursuit of a lunar decoy, suddenly dropped 3 kilometers and collided with a fellow cruiser. Both spun into chaotic tumbling, systems failing one by one. Inside Earth's fleet, targeting teams adjusted fire every 10 seconds. Missiles launched from below Earth's equator, each fitted with fusion payloads designed for close-range envelope detonations. The results didn't light up the sky, they darkened it. Coalition vessels exploded into muted flashes, their debris fields scattering like broken glass flung into vacuum. Captain Aaron, aboard the spearhead submarine Gideon, locked onto a vessel struggling to regain control near orbital sector E9. Targets offline, fire sequence? His gunner responded without pause. Already halfway there. The round connected midstream, slicing the Zorath ship down its support beam. Its back folded inward, then crumpled. Across 20 minutes, Earth's submerged fleet eliminated enemy after enemy. Not through brute force, but through overwhelming timing. They didn't pursue, they circled. Every hit was calculated off motion, not guesswork. From orbit, Zorath tried to rally, but the chain of command had snapped with the dreadnought. No new signals came from their central fleet, no rerouting data, no formations rebuilt. They responded like animals with vision gone. Fleet Commander Train, piloting one of the last remaining ships with active nav systems, watched 5 friendly vessels vanish from the field without a single warning beacon. He turned to his communications officer and shouted, "Where's the override protocol? Get me fleet-wide broadcast." The officer shook his head. "Nothing's linking. Our command channels were routed through central relay. It's gone," Train whispered. He stared at the silent void where the dreadnought used to sit. He took it out. 1 shot. On Earth, Vax monitored the kill feed as data streamed in. His eyes didn't flicker. Behind him, the room stayed locked in focus. No cheering, no speeches. Only work. Report? Dren read from the side panel. 74 confirmed disabled. 6 more pending evaluation. Retreat signals detected on 3. Vax nodded once. Don't pursue the retreating ones. But they're running. Let them tell the story. In low orbit, the final 5 Zorath vessels attempted to regroup. Only one made it to the outer radius of Earth's gravity well. It flickered once, then disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind no flare, no transmission, not even a trail. Inside its bridge, the surviving Zorath pilot clutched the sides of his navigation seat, eyes shaking. The words he transmitted to his homeworld would never be shared with Earth. But across every alien fleet listening across the stars, one message repeated. He fired once, and it was enough. Below, Earth's seas closed over the launch bays once more. The ships that rose had finished their task. And Earth didn't need them to speak. The ground near McMurdo groaned as the harvester collapsed inward. A final override signal surged through its control array. One Jelt had sliced together using captured Zorath code relays from the drones. The structure's legs buckled. Hydraulic pressure hissed out through seams at the knees. A cloud of crystalline dust exploded upward as the drill core reversed rotation and seized, then froze. That's the last of them, said Captain Wren, stepping away from the input tablet, his gloved hand shaking. Lieutenant Norik lowered his rifle, watching the fallen tower through his visor. Hard to believe we were hours from being mined off the planet. Around them, Antarctica's sky remained cloudless, but the cold air tasted of scorched minerals. Unfamiliar, sharp on the tongue. Frozen valleys, once untouched, now bore long black gouges carved by alien machines, their drills having chewed through layers of ice older than civilization itself. Nearby, engineers worked in silence as Earth's ground teams dismantled exposed Zorath gravitic arrays, loading them into reinforced transit tanks. Each had to be handled by mechanical claws insulated with ceramic plating. Even unpowered, the tech carried radiation signatures and artificial density fields that buckled weaker instruments. Send these straight to the Reykjavik labs, Wren instructed. No stops. If one truck vanishes, I'll hold the driver responsible. Within a day, deconstruction efforts spread to 4 continents. Every major research body wanted a piece of the Zorath debris field. Technologists, physicists, military engineers, each examining with different motives. Some chased utility. Some chased legacy. Some wanted vengeance, encoded into circuitry. In Tokyo, a team ran the first successful simulation of gravitic distortion as a shielded layer. It held against a fusion blast at close range. In Cairo, a firm patented a Zorath-based elevation stabilizer that would later allow the first floating defense platform to hover over the Strait of Hormuz. And in Chicago, a child watched it all unfold from his living room, clutching a toy spaceship, as real footage of the Spearpoint strike played across the world for the first time. The video wasn't raw. It had been curated. Bax had reviewed every frame before public release. No dramatization, no soundtrack, no commentary. Just the timeline. A single projectile. A split in the dreadnought. The explosion. Silence. Across global networks, it aired under one title, The Message They Heard. Investment in orbital defense multiplied within 3 weeks. Private aerospace corporations, long buried under regulatory gridlock, suddenly found themselves flooded with capital and political backing. Countries that once argued over satellite placement now negotiated joint orbital corridors. Earth had spoken in one language, force, and it had been understood. Inside Earth's Defense Council chamber, Vax stepped down from the central podium. He said nothing to the press, no farewell address, no banners. He walked down the stairwell to the lower floor and entered the project wing alone. Yelt met him inside the room, seated in a worn chair facing a wall of prototype schematics. The new version of Spearpoint was already in mock-up, shorter, denser, mobile. They're naming this version after you, Jelt said without looking back. They should name it after what's next, Vax replied. You think it'll be used again? It shouldn't be, but it will. Vax didn't answer. He stepped closer to the primary design, reading through the power curve notation. This one would be planet-mounted, capable of rotating faster than Dauntless ever managed. Not a deterrent, an enforcer. Jelt rose. You're sure I should take your chair? You already earned it the moment you launched those drones. I didn't do it alone. You did it in silence, Vax said, facing him now. That matters more. Jelt nodded once. They didn't shake hands. They didn't need to. Elsewhere, beyond Earth, in the orbit of Zorath's homeworld, a rift had opened in the coalition. The Council of 10, once unshakable, was now 6. 2 of the smaller species had broken off within days of the Dreadnought's fall, pulling their trade routes and closing their border systems to Zorath vessels. Internal surveillance flagged over 100 mutiny threats within the command ranks. Admirals who once sneered at Earth's name now debated emergency defenses against weapons that didn't yet exist. Inside a fortified chamber near the inner moons of Zorath Prime, a warlord named Kel Roth stood before a star chart. He traced his scaled fingers across system routes, once labeled red for threat, now marked in gray. Then he stopped at a blue-green sphere, positioned far along the rim of the map. He picked up a marker. Black ink bled onto Earth's coordinate. He circled it once, heavy, slow. No annotation followed. No commentary added. Just the circle. An officer stepped forward. Sir, that territory has no formal expansion routes. Why mark it? Kel Roth didn't lift his eyes. Because it doesn't need expansion, it needs distance. The officer hesitated. Should we issue a formal apology? Kel's eyes narrowed. Apologies are for equals. Outside the chamber, distant stars flickered like teeth waiting behind dark lips. And across Earth, for the first time in a generation, the sky no longer looked like something to fear. The Dauntless no longer carried weapons. Its launch coils had been removed, its guidance system disconnected, and the war bridge sealed beneath carbon mesh. It now drifted in a fixed orbit above Earth, untouched, unrestored. It remained exactly as it had been at the moment of its last action, a monument cast in motionless metal. Cameras from across the globe streamed its silhouette daily. It did not rotate. It didn't shimmer. It simply remained. In Zurich, the Global Council met inside the newly constructed assembly spire. The chamber lined with 12 seats, each representing a continent. A 13th stood empty, symbolic. Not for Earth. For the silence that had bought its unity. Counselor Brack stepped to the platform, voice transmitting directly through tactile relay for every language interpreter embedded around the globe. The defense grid's construction begins today, he announced. Funded by every government, manned by all borders. It's not to project power. It's to ensure Earth never relies on doubt again. Images rotated behind him. Modular orbital platforms, gravitic net stabilizers, fusion Perrnport flare sentinels. The entire array would wrap Earth like armor. But none of it had yet been tested. Because no one had dared come back. In classrooms from Nairobi to Seoul, a different broadcast played. It showed the full footage of the Spearpoint launch, unedited. Students weren't told what to think. They were asked to explain what they saw. Instructors spoke only once. Don't tell me what they lost. Tell me what we built. Military cadets studied the trajectory model on physical simulators, tracing the gravitational assist used to arc Dauntless into firing position. One instructor tossed a marker onto the desk and said, "You don't need to outgun them. You need to outweight them." Meanwhile, the anthem changed. Once a cry for survival, it became a memory. No lyrics spoke of fire, of blood, of vengeance. It started with silence, a full bar of it, then a low note, drawn from the recording of Dauntless's ignition sequence, slowed and stretched into rhythm. What followed was a single voice speaking one line. We speak when silence stops working. When the Zorath ambassador arrived 3 weeks later, escorted through Earth orbit under surveillance, he asked only one question upon landing. Will you receive us for dialogue? The council did not reply in person. Instead, they routed a feed of the original strike footage onto the chamber walls. Full size, floor to ceiling. Every frame, every moment, the same one broadcast to Earth's public. No words were spoken. When it ended, the ambassador was escorted out without a single handshake. The message wasn't that Earth refused to speak. It was that it had already said everything once, and it had been enough. Within days, 3 more alien civilizations, previously unknown, sent encoded transmissions requesting non-aggression agreements. Earth's representatives filed them without commentary. In a quiet office inside Reykjavik's defense lab, Jelt stood overlooking a 3-dimensional model of the 2nd-generation Spearpoint. This version would remain underground. It was never meant to be launched. It existed for one reason: to be seen on paper. He pressed a button. The system spun, highlighting structural redundancies, upgraded coil compartments, and automated deployment parameters. He spoke aloud to the assistant nearby. "Do you think we'll ever use this one?" The assistant hesitated. "That depends who forgets first." Behind them, an alert blinked, non-critical. A request from an outer system relay had just been logged. A Zorath listening post had gone permanently offline. No cause listed, no retrieval mission launched. Inside the Dauntless, a maintenance crew stepped into the observation deck, first time anyone had entered it in months. They dusted the controls, checked for structural erosion, then paused by the view. Beyond Earth, the orbital sky was clear. "You think we'll build another one of these?" one technician asked. The other leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "No, this one already said enough." At the southern pole, the final Zorath harvester, long deactivated, was lifted by crane onto a transport sled. Its weight pressed the rig into the ice. A mechanic ran one hand along its exterior. Burn marks and structural collapse told the story of its failure. No one gave orders to scrap it. Instead, Earth voted to place it inside the Global History Museum in New Delhi. Not as a trophy, as proof of what happened when patience spoke last. Back in orbit, the Dauntless caught sunrise. Its shell took in the light, dulled and weathered now. No flags, no color, only a faint trace of tungsten residue that had once held the shape of Earth's message to a civilization that believed in dominance. Inside the council's meeting room, Brack stood alone after the chamber cleared. He opened a small audio file. Max's voice played quietly. "We didn't win with strength, we ended it with certainty." Brax listened twice, then deleted it. It had already been said, and Earth did not need to repeat itself. Ever again. If you were in Vax's place, would you have fired Spearpoint? Drop a comment below and subscribe now for more cinematic HFY stories where the galaxy learns what it means to mock Earth.